everyone, my name is Isabel Zummaguire and I'm coming to you all from not so sunny Melbourne, Australia. Sorry that I can't be with you there today. It would have been 4 o'clock in the morning for me, and unfortunately as a student I had classes the next day at 8 a.m. so it just wasn't going to work for me. But I'm really grateful for this opportunity to present to you all about the network that I run here in Australia and the ways that it's advancing sustainable development within universities and what the future could look like for networks who are interested in collaboration just like mine. I would like to introduce you all to my network. The network is called the Sustainable Universities Network, and this video is going to be a little introduction to what it is. We call it SUN, which is a very adorable little name, and I hope that you gain some insights from what we've learned throughout using this network in Australia. So I'd like to start off with an acknowledgement of country. This is something that we do here in Australia to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we're streaming or meeting on. So I'm currently meeting on the lands of the Kulin people, and I would like to acknowledge their elders past, present and emerging. And I'd like to extend my acknowledgement to the First Nations people on the lands from which you're watching this from. So a little introduction to SUN. So the Sustainable Universities Network was something I came up with in 2019 with a friend of mine. We were talking about our student groups, which we had worked with, and we talked about how we would really prefer to have more engagement overseas and interstate. She was a friend from France, and I'm from Melbourne, Australia, as I said, and I founded the Monash Association of Sustainability, which is a sustainable development student group at my campus at Monash University. And we drive sustainable development changes at our university. And when I was talking to my friend, we were talking about how we were doing very similar things, yet we were so far away from each other. And it would have been really nice that when we were learning about building networks and university clubs, if we could have learned from each other. And so that's where this idea came from, but it didn't really come to fruition until 2021. And the overall aim of SUN is to bring together student-led sustainability groups and clubs from universities across Australia. So I really brought it into action in 2021 because a neighbouring university in 2020, a university called Swinburne University, also in Melbourne, they put on this awesome presentation about orangutans. And I thought it was so brilliant. Orangutans are such a fun animal that a lot of people appreciate and a lot of people want to protect. And so it's a really easy way to get people to start engaging with sustainable development issues. And I remember when I first saw this event, I was like, damn, I wish I thought of that. Like, I wish I had done the orangutan event, and I felt a little jealous. But what I realized is that that's probably not a very productive emotion to be having, and rather I should be asking and reaching out about collaborating on future events. So that's where this all came about. And so in 2020, I did just that. I reached out to the Swinburne Sustainability Society. You can see me there with bangs. And we put on this event called Conversations in Sustainability, where we talked about all these sorts of things about starting conversations about sustainability. And from both of our perspectives, it was the biggest event that either of our groups had managed to put on during the pandemic. And it was all because we were collaborating with one another. And so it really sparked my inspiration to bring about this network. So currently the Sustainable Universities Network covers 35% of all Australian university campuses. We're pretty excited about this number. We only really started about a year ago, and the fact that 35% of universities now have a SUN presence is super exciting to us. We're also in all of the states and territories across Australia, which is a super exciting thing. So throughout this process of making SUN and making the Sustainable Universities Network a larger network and meeting all these amazing student teams from across Australia who advance sustainability on their university campuses, I learned a few things. Firstly, university student groups are the most creative and innovative groups you will ever find. They're doing things that are just amazing and innovative and completely out there that you would not really expect it coming out from student groups who don't really have institutional backing a lot of the time, which is really, really cool. Secondly, they're driving real change. These student groups are coming up with these amazing ideas that are actually working on their campuses to create sustainable development changes. That is really exciting to see. And finally, I found that these groups were working extremely hard. They work so hard and they care so much about what they do. And they really just deserve all the backing in the world because they do such amazing things. However, on the flip side of all this, I found some other things as well. Firstly, these groups are often extremely underfunded and lacking institutional support from their universities. They're pushing all this amazing change at their unis, but they're not getting that support that they require to be able to push that change even further. Secondly, a lot of these groups feel quite isolated. They feel like they're fighting this fight on their own because there's not similar groups on their campus that they can, brainstorm with or work with. And it's really a shame when groups like this exist across Australia, they just might not exist on someone's campus. And finally, these groups are often really burnt out. They work really hard and often they find that they're not creating the change at the pace that they were expecting. And so they're tired and they're frustrated. And so that's what I wanted to do with Sun. I really want to bridge that gap and start helping these groups amplify their action so that it can be more effective in the future. So there are similar networks that sort of exist. I think all of us within the sustainable development space know that student groups and all sorts of networks, I should say, exist in sustainable development. And so often people are like, well, why is yours different? And I like to distinguish ourselves in two ways. First of all, we meet extremely regularly. All of the members of our network meet every single fortnight. We talk to each other about what we're doing, about the things that we're working on and ways that we can cross-promote and collaborate. But we also share any of the problems that we're having and brainstorm ways where we can solve them together. And then the second thing that I've been talking about this entire time that makes our group unique is that all of the members are university student groups. So they're clubs, societies, projects, initiatives. They're all university students based at an Australian university and who have built a group with their core mission to drive sustainable development. So whilst other networks sometimes often focus on administrative staff or professional staff or academic staff, or even they think about students, but in a more abstract way, our network is extremely grassroots, which means that it connects student groups directly. The final thing that I often say to people is that this network is open to change. As I said, it's officially only about a year old. And so we're still brand new and we're still looking for ways to develop. And so when I was asked to speak about the future of university groups, I have to say it's really up to the students and it's up to the student groups who are driving that change because they're the ones who are going to shape what this network and what sustainable development in general looks like in the future. I did want to give you an example of something that we're doing. What we like to do now is we're experimenting on ways that we can mobilize as a student voice. As I said, it's really unique for so many student groups to be so connected so intensely. And so I really want to utilize this unique opportunity to mobilize what students care about. So we've recently launched a campaign, which is a part of a bigger campaign called Say No to Scarborough Gas. And what this campaign is about there's this new project by this fossil fuel company in Australia called Woodside. And this project is a gas project 400 kilometres offshore. It is going to be one of the most damaging projects ever in the entire world. And the problem that we've come up with is that our universities, a lot of them in Australia, have partnerships and close relationships with Woodside. And so in this way, students are really concerned that our universities are giving social license to such a big and damaging corporation. So we really wanted to do something to untangle those ties, to make sure our universities are being representative of the concerns of students. So in terms of why we're concerned about Scarborough, the first thing is the absolutely devastating climate impacts this project would have. So Scarborough gas will be the most climate polluting project in Australia's history. And as some statistics here, it is equal to 15 coal-fired power plants, and it would take about 20,000 flights around the world every day for 25 years to get to the same amount of emissions that this one project is going to have. And the big concern that we're having is that if this project comes to life, we're not going to be able to reach 1.5 degrees of warming, because this project is just that damaging. The second issue we have is that it's in a spot where it's in very important blue whale habitat. And so by building it here, it's going to destroy the habitat of these extremely important animals, not just whales, but also turtles and other marine life that live across the coast of Western Australia. And so we really want our universities to be reflecting the concerns that students have about biodiversity loss. And finally, the last thing is that this project has Aboriginal cultural heritage impacts. So the Scarborough gas processing plant will be nestled within an ancient and unique piece of Aboriginal cultural heritage. It's this amazing rock art that's more than 40,000 years old. And once this project is built, it's going to destroy a lot of it, and that's extremely devastating. Yeah, this is just another thing that we wanted to point out, that this isn't the first time that this has happened, and that a group, a fossil fuel company, has come in and destroyed not only habitat, but Indigenous culture. And so we really want to stand up as a mobilized and collective student voice to do something about this. So, as I said before, we're really concerned about this as our universities play such an important role in giving social license to this company. So what that means is that, like for example, my university does have a connection with Woodside, a pretty big connection with Woodside. And so that now when students think about Woodside on campus, they don't recognize that it's a fossil fuel company, and instead they think of all the things that are happening at Monash. And that's really damaging, because it's essentially greenwashing a fossil fuel company to allow them to continue to destroy the planet. And so that's why we're standing up, and that's why we want to do something about it. So in terms of what we're doing, we've created this student letter. So we've designed this pretty lengthy 9-page letter on what Woodside means to us and why students are concerned about it. We also compiled a pretty large list of all the connections we could find that universities in Australia have to fossil fuel company Woodside. What we're asking is for people to sign it. And we're demanding our universities to cut these ties, but also to be more transparent in their relationships. So that's something we've been doing, and it's been a lot of work. But I really think it's significant, as it sort of shows the future of student groups at universities, in my opinion. I think it's a really unique case where university students from across Australia have been able to identify a problem that they really are concerned about, and have worked together to create this campaign to hopefully minimize the impacts of something we're concerned about. It's really exciting to see. And I think that really shows what the future is going to look like. I think we're going to see much more collaboration in terms of future networks, but also just future individual partnerships. I know within my university itself, within other aspects, not just about sustainability, but I've been talking to people like in the women's department of my student union at my campus, being really interested in connecting with other women's departments around Australia, as it's becoming more known that if we connect and we collaborate, we can create a much better impact and a much more effective strategy and campaigns if we all work together. together, especially now that we've all experienced, the pandemic, and here in Melbourne, we had pretty extensive lockdowns. So we're all pretty well versed when it comes to communicating online. And so I think we're going to see a lot more collaboration. And what I think is going to happen is that regions are going to become the building blocks. Like right now, universities or like individual students are the building blocks to make larger things. But what I would love to see is that regions become building blocks to create a much more international movement, because more people equals more power, and that's how we're going to stop all the things that university students are concerned are happening. I think what we're going to see as well is more institutional recognition. At least this is what I hope. As I said, these student groups are doing so much to advance changes on their campus. From our experiences here in Australia, we see student groups pushing their universities to become more plant-based. We see them pushing their universities to reduce waste. We see them pushing for divestment. And they're really changing the ways that universities operate. And so I think universities are going to finally recognize that these student groups are the ones that are pushing change within their institution. And this recognition can come not only from sort of a moral backing and just being like, yeah, this is the cool thing that our students are doing, but also funding. I think university groups need a lot more help in sort of financial aspects, especially because a lot of them are not funded at all. But I also think it'll be a recognition of our efforts. And I really do hope we see that universities from a very high level institutional, administrative level start enacting the things that students are demanding. And finally, I think we're going to see more students. I think the future is going to see more people enrolled to university. We've already seen that trend happening, but I think we're also going to see more students becoming concerned in sustainable development. Like this network probably wouldn't have existed a few years ago, but now there's been such a proliferation of student groups in sustainability that a network like this can thrive and actually be effective. So I think we're going to see more students become concerned, more students create cool initiatives, and more students just working and being active in the space. So that's sort of an overview of what we've been doing here in Australia, an overview of what I think the future could look like. If you ever sort of want to get in contact with me, those are the details of Sun. We are quite busy all the time, as I'm sure we all are, but do reach out, particularly if you're interested in setting up something similar at your institution or in your region. I'm super excited to get to have been here today and to have presented to you all, but I'm also excited to work with you. As I said, I do really think that networking and collaboration is the future. And I think what that means is that we're going to have a lot more connections and collaborations that are international and across borders. So thank you so much for listening to me. Once again, sorry I couldn't be there today, but I really hope that you took something out of my presentation. Thanks so much.